Alright everyone, JKrowling is being cancelled right now by a bunch of people who are going crazy over the fact that she's written a new book, and apparently the basic concept of the book is that there's this murderer who's like, I guess nuts or something, and he dresses up as a woman in order to kill people. And at one point, actually, I think there's a section, and I don't know if this is actually true from the initial book, but I guess dresses up in a burqa and is remarking upon how it's the perfect way to commit these crimes because nobody could possibly identify you. And it's rather interesting. And of course, JKrowling is no stranger to, this sort of controversy, if you can call it that. It's really the Cringe Fringe that's mad about this. But they've already called her like transphobic because she believes in genetics. She believes that females actually exist. The problem that I've identified, and I have been since the transgendered bathroom issue, half a decade ago, is not people who are actually transgendered in the biological sense. That is, that they've for mental reasons, in their brain, there's a disconnect between the brain and the genitals, the gender presentation. That is, that the person in the hormonal sense is essentially the other gender. The problem is, that is authentically transgendered, and it relies upon the existence of male and female, and also, I would argue, and I have, hypersexualized tropes about what those genders represent. So a person who's transgendered, like male to female, will tend to wear like the pink skirt and stuff. The expression of gender is almost like straight out of the 1950s or something. It's almost like out of a Hollywood film, like hyper-sexualized, hyper-gendered, if you can use the term. It's really interesting. The problem arises when you get people who are not actually transgendered being perverts. When you get a dude who just puts a skirt on, says, well, I identify as female, and then walks into the locker room. There is currently no differentiation under the law, generally speaking, to prevent that from happening. That's number one. Number two, when you try to erase the dichotomy of gender, which is based on chromosomes, specifically the presence or absence of the Y chromosome, you inevitably erase womanness. Womanhood goes bye-bye, because if gender is a large spread of different expressions, which I would use the term gender expression, but let's say Tumblr genders, 60,000 different genders or whatever it's up to now, and attack helicopter and foxkin and all these other things. There is no woman. There's no man either. You have erased them. They fundamentally no longer have meaning. And so what JKrowling, or other feminists would argue, because she is a feminist, she's a feminist icon actually, one of the most powerful and respected women in the world except by Tumblr, and part of Reddit and Twitter, of course. What she's arguing is that that's not a good thing, because you've still got a struggle for women's rights going on in some parts of the world. You have women who are raped and then they get stoned for having been raped. You have women who can't vote. You have women who can't drive. You have women who are brutalized, who are married off when they're 9 years old, and weird shit like that all around the world. The struggle is ongoing to liberate them from totalitarianism, basically. Gender-based authoritarianism, you could use the term. And of course, as a libertarian, no, I don't agree with that at all. I think people should be treated equally. You got that struggle going on, but if there's no actual definition of what defines a woman, then those struggles no longer make sense. They're completely erased because of the malleability of gender being delved into by a postmodernist, decadent, leftist group that would like things to complain about, really. And so they're complaining about JKrowling, and I'm thinking about how funny it is. Because, when she first started releasing Harry Potter, she was also attacked by people. Back then, what was it now, 20 years ago or whatever, she was attacked by people from the traditionalistic right wing, what you would term it generally. By evangelicals, by people who were churchgoers. They were afraid of Harry Potter because they thought that it would convert their children to Wicca. They thought it would make their kids devil worshippers, and in that particular era, although the Satanic Panic is over, by the late 90s, early 2000s, you do have a holdover evangelical remnant at that time that is basically acting much the same as it was before. It's dwindling, but it's becoming just as vocal as before. When they see this, when they see Pokemon, they practically shit their pants. I can remember it. They were trying to claim Pikachu was devil worship too. Oh, you're summoning evil demons to fight one another. It literally being said at the time. I remember it because I was literally there and old enough to understand what was on talk radio. The evangelicals attacked Harry Potter. They thought it was terrible. One of the first occult videos I made was pointing out that there are authentic occult tropes in it. The Hand of Glory is a very real occult device, spoken of in actual grimoires from the 1700s. You have numerous allusions to various cryptids that are, in the legendary sense, in the mystic sense, very authentic. Historically noted by people at the time that were interested in it. And then not just unicorns and dragons, but the whole 9 yards, practically everything that's mentioned there. She was being attacked by them. And then over time, they sort of lose the cultural battle against Harry Potter, and then now half of them have the Harry Potter collection. They no longer worry about it making them devil worshippers because it never happened. Now the worry comes from the Cringe Fringe woke left, talking about how JKrowling, by virtue of believing that women exist and having a protagonist that dresses as a woman to kill people, is obviously massively transphobic. I'm just not seeing it, dude, and most of these people, they won't even read the book before they bother judging it. I guess it's called Troubled Blood or something. Now, to be honest, J.K. Rowling's books post-Harry Potter are an order of magnitude less successful. That being said, she's still going to sell millions of copies of it. It will probably be generally well received. She is a good writer. I've read all of the Harry Potter books. They were far better than the movies, by the way, by and large. It'll be very successful. She'll make, 10 million additional dollars or something. She's one of the richest women in the world, one of the most notorious, and these people want to cancel her by virtue of the fact that she believes in chromosomes. And they're looking for any excuse to crucify her at any given moment and label her a bigot. And so they fixated on the basic form of this book. You are essentially saying that this person should be unable to make a certain fictional trope, to the point where some bookstores are like, we're not going to stock Harry Potter anymore because it's evil and she's evil and bigoted. You're saying that there are subjects that shouldn't be written about, like certain fictional themes that shouldn't be in books. You're acting exactly like the evangelicals did 20 years ago. You're making the same statements. You're making the same claims. It's a bunch of silly superstition, by and large not borne out by reality. And reasonable people, of course, will roll their eyes at the left. We need to start doing more to mock and ridicule people who are engaged in this kind of whining crybully behavior. Because it's obvious that simply rolling your eyes and walking away doesn't work, because then they just get emboldened. And unfortunately, they'll attack her sponsors, and they'll mass call bookstores and say, we demand that you get rid of J.K. Rowling's books or we're going to protest and shut you down. You're acting exactly like a bunch of starched shirt Bible thumpers a la 1999 or so. You look the same to me. It's just like the liberal politicians now. They're just exactly the same as Bush. History's repeating itself. And it's not a good period in history. Only this time it's the left being stupid. That's about all. Peace out.